Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Camp Blood Media. Josh here. Today we'll be continuing our Wrong Turn reviews with Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines, which released October 25th, 2012 and was written and directed by Declan O'Brien, who also directed Wrong Turn 3 and Wrong Turn 4. So our opening scene deals with a reporter who's in the town of Fair Lake, West Virginia. She's there for the Mountain Men Festival that the town holds every year, which apparently when the town disappeared in 1817, the legend goes that the entire town disappeared, and then all the mountain men piled them up in the woods, burned the town, and then ate everybody. Why they're having a celebration that celebrates the mass murder of the entire town, I'm really not sure. Seems a little odd if you ask me. So this reporter ends up going off for a jog to take off some steam because she hates being there for this festival. She ends up encountering Doug Bradley's character, who in this one is like the father of the three mutants. That kind of directly contradicts Wrong Turn 1 and Wrong Turn 2, where the gas station owner said that he was the father of the three mutants. Maybe these are supposed to be the same characters, but I don't think so. So that's a weird continuity issue that they seem to have had now between the first three Wrong Turn movies and these two Wrong Turn movies.
You know what? I'm sick of this.
She ends up getting her finger cut off by one of the mutants. Doug Bradley ends up axing her in the stomach, and then they end up chopping her hand off, which gives us our opening title sequence of Wrong Turn 5. It was an okay opening to the movie, but definitely the weakest opening so far. Wrong Turn 1 through 4 definitely had better openings and better kills. We then pick up with our group of friends who are heading to Fair Lake for the Mountain Men Festival. They end up running into Doug Bradley's character, who runs them off the road in a scene kind of similar to I Know What You Did Last Summer, where Buddy's standing in the middle of the road and they think they've killed him, and then they go to check it out and it turns out he's not dead. A very similar scene. I don't know if they were trying to do a little reference to Know I Know What You Did Last Summer, but it definitely felt similar to that. So anyway, he ends up laying in the middle of the road, and when the guy goes to check on him, he slashes his arm with a knife. So the three guys from the friend group end up coming up and start kicking the crap out of him. The police arrive and arrest everybody. This is when we meet the sheriff, who... However, this is also when I started to realize this movie suffers from the same thing as Wrong Turn 4, where nobody really feels like the main character. Everybody is kind of on the same standing, and nobody is really a good actor. When the sheriff first arrives in the scene, she tells everybody to get down the ground, and she's trying to act really serious, but you can tell she's trying not to smile, which kind of bothered me a little bit. So everyone gets taken back to the police station, which becomes our main set for the rest of the movie. They arrest the friends, but she lets four of them go because they had nothing to do with the drugs that she ended up finding in the druggy guy's book bag. So the rest of them end up going back to the hotel, and that splits up our group between some at the hotel and then someone back at the police station with the police officer and Doug Bradley's character. He basically tells them that if they don't let him out, the three mutants are going to come kill everybody one by one, and that's exactly what proceeds to happen. They leave one cop behind the scene to watch over everything while everyone gets arrested. He ends up getting 2 arrows in the knees from Three Finger. He gets both of his ears cut off, and then he gets stabbed in the head in our second kill of the movie. This one I actually probably liked the most. It might have been my favorite kill from the whole movie because it felt more like a Wrong Turn kill versus the super elaborate dumb kills that we get throughout the rest of the movie. Around this time also, the mutants proceed to cut down the phone lines and take out the power to the whole city. They take the power plant guard and they put him into these ropes and into this really elaborate pulley system. As they pull in the ropes, it'll pull him slowly up into power lines and shock him as long as they hold him up there. Like, what was the point of that? Why didn't they just... It's just way too over the top, and it only gets worse from there. It's around this time that we get a name drop for the title of the movie.
I think I took a wrong turn.
Another wrong turn, huh?
We get a quick scene over at the Mountain Men Festival that shows one of the deputies having sex with one of the partygoers. This is just to show why he's not responding to any calls or anything later in the movie when the sheriff is trying to get a hold of him. Basically, anybody who went to this Mountain Men Festival and was having sex, they got to live, and the people who stayed back behind in the town got to die. Kind of makes you wish you went to the festival that celebrated murder, I guess. Our next kill is Cruz, who ends up leaving the hotel to bring some food to the druggy guy over at the police station. She ends up getting captured by Three Finger, who slices her belly open and starts pulling out her intestines. Then he starts feeding them to her little by little. This was actually a decent kill because it wasn't super elaborate like all the other ones we're about to get. So I did like this one, but I think I like the one at the beginning with the other police officer just a little bit more. So back at the hotel, after Gus and Lita have just finished having sex, one of the mutants comes to the door. They end up kidnapping Gus and taking him. They would have got Lita too, but she ends up whacking one of the mutants on the head with a pipe and trying to get away. He ends up grabbing her, and she finds a knife that one of her friends dropped earlier before he left. She stabs the mutant, and it seems to hurt him, and he reacts and jumps backwards, and she ends up getting away. In the previous movie, They said that the mutants were impervious to pain. So you'd think that even if she stabbed him, he would recognize he got stabbed, but he seemed to actually react in pain. So it seems like that's another little continuity issue from the previous movies that's in this one. So then they take Gus, tie him to the back of their truck and then to a stump, and they start busting up his shins with sledgehammers. It's such a brutal scene. You see the bones cracking out through the bottom of his legs and he ends up passing out from the pain. They drive him all the way over to the police station, throw him out of the truck, and then as he's crawling towards the police station door, they slam into him with the truck and just completely obliterate his body. This was another decent kill, but at the same time, I feel like they could have just murdered him back at the woods. But this one isn't quite as elaborate as some of the other kills in the movie, so I did still kind of like this one. After Gus is killed, the sheriff deputizes the drunk guy and the remaining friends that are in the police station.
You're all deputized. Okay, now listen, I'm gonna go across the street to the store. I'm gonna fire up the shortwave and call for help.
She uses the radio to contact Iron Fist, who doesn't believe her about anything that's going on because he uses the internet to look up the Mountain Man Festival and he thinks she's just full of crap.
Are you stoned?
What?
Makes sense, because why would there be a town celebrating the mass murder of their town, and on that night someone just happens to be calling and asking for help? I probably wouldn't believe her either. So just as the sheriff goes back over to the police station, Lita shows up and she finds Gus's dead body. She freaks out and she just wants to survive, and Doug Bradley slowly starts whispering into her ear saying, "You should let me out, you should let me out." And she's like, "No, I don't trust you." But it's slowly starting to work on her because she wants to live while she's seeing all her friends die. Her other two friends decide to go off and look for Cruz, who was gutted earlier.
Be careful.
You will.
They leave, they find her dead body, and then they both end up getting captured right away. This leads to another elaborate kill sequence where they took the time to bury the druggy guy in the ground and chain up the friend. Then Three Finger gets in a giant snowblower, slowly drives towards the guy buried in the ground, and then drives around him and then finally takes his head off with the snowblower. It just seemed way too elaborate of a kill for these guys. Why not just kill him when you first captured him instead of going through all this just to cut his head off? So then his other friend, who has the chain around his leg, ends up just crawling straight ahead of the snowblower instead of trying to walk around it or do anything, and he just gets sucked right into the snowblower. It was a really cool death seeing his body get all crunched up like that, but at the same time it was incredibly stupid because the guy didn't try at all to get away, and it's another case of having two kills in one spot like the last two movies have done, when they easily could have split them up and had two different kills instead of one kind of over-the-top elaborate kill. Doug Bradley starts talking to Lita, who is now the last remaining friend from her group. He's saying, "If you let me out, I promise you'll survive and we'll just leave." She's not believing him, but she's kind of slowly being convinced.
Vince, let me out of here.
She tries to get the sheriff to let him out, saying that they'll live if they do it, but the sheriff isn't having any of it. She ends up sending the drunk guy to the Mountain Men Festival to get a hold of the deputies because she hasn't been able to get a hold of them for the whole movie. On his way there, though, he ends up driving through a trap of barbed wire, which crashes his police SUV. They end up getting him and taking him back to town to the building next door across from the police station. They set up a little pyre and they put him inside a barrel, and they start burning him alive inside this building. They set the whole building on fire, which leads the sheriff to hear the drunk guy screams from across the street. But as she's running over to help him, the whole building explodes and it sends her flying backwards and she's unconscious for a minute. Meanwhile, inside the police station, Doug Bradley has finally convinced Lita to let him out. Pretty much the second that she lets him out, he ends up grabbing a letter opener or something pointy and he stabs both of her eyes out. Had she left him in there or shot him or just not done what she had done, she would have still had both of her eyes, and she wouldn't end up with the horrible fate that waits for her at the end of this movie. Lita ends up coming outside, screaming and crying about her eyes. The sheriff goes and grabs her to bring her back inside, but Doug Bradley comes out and it forces her to shoot Doug Bradley. She ends up pulling him back inside and throwing him into a cell and telling the girl to just stay there and not do anything else, because if she does, she's probably gonna end up getting herself killed because she can't see anything now.
Oh God, I'm so stupid.
The sheriff goes back outside and she sees her husband's car from earlier, so she walks up to the car and he's tied up in a way that if the door is open, this thing will stab into his stomach and then... The sheriff goes up to the car, doesn't really pay attention to what's going on. She sees her husband gagged and tied up, but she doesn't really think about it. She opens the car and then the blade slices his stomach way open. His guts start falling out. She's like trying to scoop his guts back into his belly, which was kind of stupid really, but I guess she was panicking. And then her husband definitely dies after Three Finger comes and drives into the back of the car with the yellow truck, sending it flying forward. The sheriff is laying on the ground. She pulls out her gun and shoots Three Finger as he comes towards her. But she only has one bullet left at this point, so her gun is completely useless. Three Finger ends up just beating the crap out of her, and they drag her back inside inside the police station where the sheriff is tied up in one of the cells, and she's tied up in a way that if she puts her feet completely down the floor, there's a shotgun underneath her neck that will go off and just blow her head off. Meanwhile, the mutants are spraying gas all throughout the police station, and Doug Bradley's just laughing at her, being like, I told you this was gonna happen.
I love irony. Don't you?
So he says he left her a mercy to either kill herself or burn her alive, and burning them alive is not fun.
Help you burn now.
So Doug Bradley and the mutants end up going outside as the police station starts to burn down. You see the sheriff slowly starting to burn, and she's screaming. She closes her eyes and puts her feet down on the ground, and the shotgun blows her head right off, and all the blood and bits splatter all over the wall. It was definitely a great, gory death, but again, why didn't they just kill her or burn her or whatever, instead of setting up this saw trap for her to die in? This movie really suffered from overthinking their kills and also not having a main character to root for, because again, all of the characters kind of sucked again this time around. There was really nobody I liked this time, as opposed to liking a few characters from Wrong Turn 4. So as the movie ends, our blind girl Lita, who had her eyes stabbed out, is walking up the road trying to get away from the town when our yellow truck pulls up in the distance, and it has all three mutants and Doug Bradley inside. She doesn't realize this. She thinks that she's been saved. Three Finger grabs her arm and leads her to the truck, and she's so thankful for being saved. But then Doug Bradley whispers in her ear that it's all over for her, and she lets out all these blood-curdling screams, starts banging on the back of the truck as the truck drives off in the end credits. Early in the movie, Doug Bradley basically told her, we're going to have our way with you, and then we're going to slit your throat, which is probably exactly what happened after the credits rolled.
I'm gonna whisper in your ear right before I slit your throat.
So it sucks for her character, but she really's got no one to blame, because she's the one that let him out of the prison and got her eyes gouged out in the first place. So yeah, unlike the previous four movies, I gotta say, this was the one I liked the least easily. There's really no comparison between this and the first four movies. It was such a lower drop in quality. The acting across the board really wasn't that great. The kills were kind of too elaborate, and it didn't necessarily feel like a Wrong Turn movie because it was set in the middle of town this time around. Maybe if the movie had been centered around the actual festival goers being picked off one by one, then it would have been a little bit better. But it just felt odd having everyone running around this big town that was clearly a big set piece. If there was ever a town that was fake, it was the one in this movie. Like, not a bit of the town looked real at all. This one definitely has the weakest storyline so far. It's just a group of friends going to this town and then getting killed by Three Finger, Sawtooth, and One Eye. There really was not much to talk about, unlike the previous movie where there was kind of constantly something happening. This one fell flat immediately, and this never really got better. The mutants this time around also didn't look very good. They looked their worst easily. Sawtooth looked really great in the last movie. All three of them looked really great in Wrong Turn 4. But this movie, he looked like this weird pig man or something. Like the prosthetics they had on his face looked absolutely terrible. I don't know what they were thinking. Even Three Finger himself looked a little weird this time around. As opposed to the previous couple movies where the mutants actually looked pretty great, they looked terrible in this one, and I'm really hoping they pick it up for Wrong Turn 6. Alright guys, so what did you think of Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines? Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought, and if you really liked the movie, I actually want to know, because I'm curious to see if anyone out there really likes this movie, because it'd be pretty surprising to me if some of you did. Come out next week for 6, Last Resort. Until the next one,